Hi everybody, it's Ryan, and on this episode I want to tell you about the special holiday session that I ran in Dungeons & Dragons for our group. So grab your latkes and eggnog, it's time to roll for initiative. So right now we're in the middle of a campaign series that Dawn is running, but we were taking a break because of the holidays and a bunch of people were traveling, and I wanted to jump in with sort of a special day-long one-shot. So I began thinking of a couple of different ideas and what did I want to do that was clearly related to the holidays. And I kicked around a couple of different ideas. I thought about maybe chasing down a Krampus, or was there some sort of infiltration thing that I could do to make everyone feel like Santa Claus, or was there a play on Herschel and the Hanukkah goblins? And what I settled on after poking around was taking inspiration from Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol. A lot of the framework for my campaign was based off of what I had read from Penny Arcade's Gabe. He talks about putting together a D&D session based on A Christmas Carol for his family. So a lot of the loose structure that I have is based around that. And we'll put a link down someplace so that you can go and check that out if you'd like. But I'm going to talk about what my take was and how I ran things. I ran it with 3 players. It was Dawn and our friends Pierce and Alyssa. Everyone started off as level 10. We had a Goliath fighter, a human fighter bard, and a dragonborn druid. And it was really cool to watch these level 10 characters throughout the night flex their muscle and figure out what it was that they could do. I gave them the backstory that they'd been traveling for about 6 months. They were a part of the knights errant for their kingdom, and they were headed back home for the celebration of the winter festival of Krinkle. Along the way, a snowstorm kicked up. They found themselves in the Black Forest beset by a bunch of wolves, winter wolves, and then sort of my own mega monster creation of Fenris. To be completely honest, this was a one-shot, and so I played a little bit loose with some of the rules, at least the rules as far as the hit points and some of the abilities of my monsters. And at one point, I made up a monster on the spot. I wanted something that was combat, but not just hacking away at hit points. And I'll talk about that in a little bit. In a long-running campaign, I could see how that would be really annoying, or maybe not knowing what it is that you were fighting. On the other hand, characters don't always know what they're fighting, even if the players do. And so if you decide to reskin a monster or alter something or make it more powerful because it fits the storyline, I don't think that there's a problem with that. And if it causes strife within your group, maybe it's just a good opportunity to have a conversation about the difference between player knowledge of the handbook or the monster's manual and character knowledge of what it is that they're facing. After a big fight in the forest, which to be honest took a lot longer than it needed to, it was my first time DMing in a while, and so I probably could have been a little bit more expeditious of getting to the main plot. But anyway, after that fight and sort of falling unconscious and hearing villagers in the distance coming their way, the party awoke. They were in a room with a pretty jovial guy sitting and playing cards, and they realized that they were, out of their armor and clearly had been taken care of over the last couple of days. This was my first time in the night. That was fun. I got to break out some of my character voices, and through the course of conversation, they found out that they were in the home of one Robert Cratch, and I'm the village blacksmith here. And that's when the players kind of started losing it, as they realized Robert Cratch, Bob Cratchit, and it dawned on them for the first time what holiday story it was that they were playing. I'd kept it secret and they didn't want to know. They wanted to figure it out through the course of the night. The plot revolved around the fact that there had been 12 children and Tim Cratch, the 13th child, to fall sick over the last year in this little town. It was ruled over by a baron who was always kind of a tough man, but in the last year had gotten a lot meaner, and taxes were going up and all of that. So the party decided they were going to figure out what was wrong with all of these children. They met with a hedge witch, which was really fun. Her voice was really neat. She got to be a little bit of an all-knowing, all-powerful character, which was a lot of fun. She got to sort of chastise one of the characters and make fun of him. It was Pierce's character, for being so proper and hoity-toity and acting like the noble that he really was. It was also the point of the night where I got to introduce sort of the main antagonist's name for the evening, which was, of course, Nazir! Although he always wears that black armor over the last year, so we call him the Ebon Nazir. Which is when, again, the party kind of came to a stop for a little while as everyone laughed and rolled their eyes at my ridiculous wordplay and puns. From there, it became a little bit of information gathering at the pub, a break-in into Nazir's house, and then finally running across a ghost of one of the former barons of this town, which was, of course, the ghost of Jacob Marley, who let the party know that Nazir's soul was in danger, but it wasn't necessarily his fault. And they were given the quest to be the spirit guardians over Nazir's soul, as 3 spirits came to him to help save his soul throughout the night. After a little bit of infiltration, which was a lot of fun, they ended up in Nazir's bedchambers, discovered that he was absolutely a powerful magic user, but was willing to listen to what it was that was going on, and even admitted to the fact that he had discovered he was a little bit more cruel over the last year, had been collecting bits of arcane artifacts and knowledge and tomes and wasn't really sure why. There was a flash of light, there was a translucent female spirit who showed up. The spirit wasn't able to see the party, and that became pretty important for them to realize, and they were whisked away to the past. The spirit of Christmas past, or I'm sorry, the spirit of Krinkle past was fun. They went to a schoolhouse and realized that Nazir's old schoolmaster was a priest of Asmodeus, and there was a contract signed that until he was 49 years old, Nazir would be wealthy and powerful and respected, but on his 50th birthday, which was a year ago, his soul would go to someone else. Around this time, a bunch of zombie children popped up, which were really creepy and sort of just fodder for everyone to help fight, while I occupied the barbarian fighting a couple of attic whispers. Now, these are sort of a homebrew creation that I found online from Pathfinder. I really like these monsters, mostly because they're creepy. They're really creepy. I upped their hit points a little bit, I upped some of their damage, but the way that they worked was they didn't do a whole lot of damage. They did 2d4 plus 2. But on a failed constitution save, the characters were burdened with a level of exhaustion. So 2 of the characters, the druid and the barbarian, from this point forward in the night had a level of exhaustion, which gave them a disadvantage on a lot of their rolls. This was kind of an important moment because it was when the party realized, well, just because we're powerful doesn't mean that everything is going to be a cakewalk. They ended up beating everybody, destroying all of the monsters, but those disadvantage rolls really made things difficult for them and caused them to have to plan a lot harder throughout the evening. So, you know, maybe as a GM, think about what are these ways that it can be more than just attacking each other's hit points back and forth. I thought that was kind of a fun way of introducing something else. After the first one was done and they came back to the present, they found themselves in the town the morning that they arrived unconscious. So they were in Krinkle present, but about a day earlier. And again, they weren't really able to interact with anything that was around them. But a storm giant showed up with a big, jovial, booming voice that took them around town. And they ended up at Nazir's nephew, Fred, again, going off of the story. This was my favorite encounter of the evening, and even though it was getting a little bit late, I think that the players really enjoyed it as well. On their way out, after the spirit of Krinkle present and Nazir had left, they were stopped by a burst of flame and smoke and arcane energy out of the fireplace as a vice spirit appeared. The players began attacking and casting spells, and nothing seemed to affect this spirit. But the spirit would mold and shift and change, and sometimes it was three beautiful women, and other times it was very beautiful men or people offering food and wine and telling jokes. It was sort of the embodiment of the vices, and it caused them to fall under a charm spell. It actually happened to the barbarian a lot. So then the barbarian was protecting vice from the other players. So if there were attacks that were causing hit point damage, it was the players attacking themselves, which was frustrating but a lot of fun. The way that they were able to combat the spirit was by either casting spells or simply in character wording insults at it. Anything that they did that caused Vice to make a charisma or a wisdom save was the way they whittled down its hit points. Originally, I had it slated that they had to get 10 successes in a row. It was late in the evening and sort of on the fly, I decided that was probably too much, but they had to get 5 successes in a row. As players, they didn't know this at the time. They got 3 and then they missed one and they had to start all over. But it was a lot of fun, and it was a different way of going about combat, not just swinging axes and swords at each other. And it encouraged them to act, behave, and speak in character. And as a DM, I'm very lucky that Alyssa, Pierce, and Dawn are all really good at that. As they moved on to the third act of the evening, it was puzzle time. I know that Dawn said that she was actually really frustrated at first because she wasn't sure what was happening. I had time freeze. And so Nazir and one player character were the only ones able to act at a time. But once they solved the riddle, a new player would unfreeze, the previous one would freeze, so each one of them got their own chance to help solve the riddle. I used Nazir more as a sounding board. They were my riddles. I wasn't going to solve them for the players, but as they were on the right track but frustrated because they were tired or just not figuring it out, I would drop little breadcrumbs. Again, I don't think there's anything wrong with having players, and especially characters, frustrated, as long as it's frustrating but still fun, and there's a real sense of accomplishment once they figured things out. Which of course they did. They went into the graveyard, they saw the familiar Dickensian hooded figure, figured that this was supposed to be another spirit who wouldn't be able to see them, but with a really good perception check, Pierce's character realized that this spirit could see them. They confronted it and he began to laugh, pulled back its hood, and they realized that this was a different version of Nazir, who had become a lich. It was interesting to watch the players' faces when they realized that it was a lich, this high challenge rating classic D&D monster. The fight lasted a long time. It was grueling. In the very first round, the lich used power word kill, which is a devastating spell. Any creature that has fewer than 100 hit points dies. There's no saving throw, and our druid died. She was in polar bear form, was hit by it. They saw the blue glowy form of her soul get ripped out as her body transformed back into her natural state and then collapsed on the floor. They had some magical items that helped them out. They were homebrew magical items. There was an acorn that brought a character back to life as per the resurrection spell, so was able to come back with 1 hit point, and so that helped him out. I gave them that from the very beginning because I knew I was going to use the Lich. I knew I was going to use that spell, but I didn't want it to be a TPK, a total party kill. I didn't want it to be no fun because someone was dying. They all knew that there was a chance they wouldn't survive the night. It was a one-shot after all, but I wanted to give them the fighting chance. Later in the fight, another character died and was resurrected as a zombie, and directly before his turn was saved from having to spend the rest of the fight fighting against his party members. It was a very long, a very grueling fight, but a lot of fun. They worked together. It was also the point, and of the evening where I had to say ridiculous things like asking if someone could look up the hit points of a mausoleum wall. And it was also a point where we had to use our salt and pepper shakers, which are little Tyrannosaurus Rex dinosaurs, as stand-in because two of the characters polymorphed into dinosaurs, into T-Rexes, in order to be able to sort of snap at and try to attack the Lich. It was a long fight, it was very fun, but in the end they were triumphant. At this point in the night, they realized that the pendant that they thought was the Lich's phylactery didn't matter at all, and that because Nazir's body was devoid of a soul, his body was in fact the phylactery, and they slowly came to the realization that they were going to have to kill Nazir in order to stop this future from happening. At which point there was a flash of light and thunder and a cloud formation that looked like a giant dragon, and then they saw this old man walking forward in full platinum armor with a dragon's head on it. With a good religions check, one of the characters realized that this was an avatar of Bahamut, the good platinum dragon himself. He healed the characters, cast restoration on them, asked if they thought that Nazir had earned redemption, and then presided over Nazir's execution. The point at which our player slit the throat of Nazir, there was a flash of light, and they woke up again in the bed, in the house that they recognized as Robert Cratch's, only no one seemed to know what it was that had transpired. We pretty much narrated things from there on out. There weren't a lot of checks or rolls or anything. Nazir showed up with some of his guards, and everyone knew who he was and were happy to see him, and he hugged people. Tiny Tim Cratch ran by and was no longer sick, and the party was of course invited to stay for the Feast of Krinkle with everyone. It was a lot of fun for me to work in some classic lines from the books and movies throughout the night. Towards the end of the feast, of course, Tiny Tim exclaimed, "Ilmater bless us, everyone." And as they were given horses and rode off, Nazir, the last one to see them ride off, shouted out, "Isn't it fantastic? The spirits did it all in one night." Overall, it was a lot of fun. It was a 13-hour session, and I'm in my 30s, and that's not nearly as much fun as it was when I was 20 and gaming in college. But I enjoyed it. It was fun. I'm not looking forward to doing it again anytime soon, but those big day-long sessions, I think with a little bit of planning and maybe keeping it closer to an 8-hour session, I could probably do again. It was really neat. It was also fun to get to GM again. I haven't done that in a little while, and I really liked watching these higher level characters get to play and unfold the story. Watching the players realize what was going on in game and what it compared to that happened in the book was really neat. There were plenty of fun one-liners that got kicked around. So that was my holiday session. It was a lot of fun, and I'm really glad that I did it, and I'm looking forward to trying to be able to do a couple more of them similarly in the future. If you ever ran a holiday special game or a one-shot or something like that, let us know what it was and how that was for you. So thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe and share the video, and I'll see you next time on Roll for Initiative.